There's a knock on the door, and the father goes to the door and answers it, and in front of the door stands a young man. He says, "Sir, I've come to pick up your daughter for a date." And the father says to him, "Well, son, I want you to understand, my daughter's very precious to me. She means a lot to me. I would die to protect her. What are your intentions?" I think most young men would stand there and the mouth would drop open and they'd say, "Huh?" But today's lesson is about intentions. Living good intentions. Someone in the crowd said to him, Luke 12:31 through 21, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the family inheritance with me." But he said to him, "Man, who appointed me a judge or arbitrator over you?" Then he said to them, "Beware and be on your guard against every form of greed, for not even when one has an abundance does his life consist of his possessions." And he told them a parable, saying, "The land of a rich man was very productive. And he began reasoning to say within himself, 'What shall I do, since I have no place to store my crops?' Then he said, 'This is what I will do. I will tear down my barns, and I will build bigger barns.' Then he said, 'I will store all my grain and my goods, and I will say to my soul, eat, drink, and be merry.' But God said to him, 'You fool, this very night your soul is required of you, and now who will own what you have prepared? So is the man who stores up treasures for himself and is not rich toward God.'" What were his intentions? Luke 12:13 through 21. Now large crowds were going along with him, and he turned and said to them, I want you to listen to this, incidentally, because the context of paying the price is in these next few verses. I want you to listen to the price that he's talking about. "If anyone comes to me and does not hate his own father and mother and wife and children and brothers and sisters, yes, and even his own life, he cannot be my disciple. Whoever does not carry his own cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. For which one of you who wants to build a tower does not first sit down and calculate the cost to see if he has enough to complete it? Otherwise, when he has laid the foundation and is not able to finish, all who observe it begin to ridicule him, saying, 'This man began to build and was not able to finish.' Or, what king, when he sets out to meet another king in battle, will not first sit down and consider whether he is strong enough with 10,000 men to encounter the one coming against him with 20,000? Or else, while the other one is still far away, he sends a delegation and asks for terms of peace. So then, none of you can be my disciple who does not give up all his possessions." Jesus is talking about people who have intentions of finding discount Christianity on sale for 50%. Because they're not going to give up parents. And they're not going to give up children. And they're not going to give up their own desires of life. And they're not going to pick up their cross and follow. But their intention is to be saved, but not to be a slave of Christ. We're talking about intentions, and that of calculating the cost. Luke 14, 25 through 33. Some of you may recognize this man. His name is Lewis Hale. He preached for the church at Southwest in Oklahoma City, I think in the same congregation for approximately 50 years. And this is a photograph taken of him by the Christian Chronicle, celebrating his years of faithful service. And so I want to read from the book of Mark. This time, chapter 4, verses 14 through 20. Remember, we're looking at intentions. What are the intentions that you see here? And the reason I chose this picture is because, well, I know Lewis personally. I've had opportunity to speak at Southwest, and I know of his 50 years of dedicated servants. And so I have chosen his picture to refer to only the first few words in that particular paragraph. The sower sows the word. Did you hear what is being sown? It is only the Word of God. It is not the traditions of men. It is not the law of Moses. It is the gospel of Jesus Christ as contained in His covenant. So, if the sower sows anything other than the Word, he's going to get weeds, and he is not going to get wheat. So what is the intention of the one sowing the seed? Looking further at Mark 4, verses 14 and following. There are those who are beside the road where the word is sown. And when they hear, immediately Satan comes and takes away the word which has been sown in them. Now, it almost sounds like they are helpless. That's not the situation, because where Satan is taking the word from is from within them, where he already resides. He's not some outside force that says, "Oop, they're preaching a gospel sermon. I better go make sure that Bill doesn't hear it." No, he's already inside of Bill. So when the word comes, he just, in his influence, knocks it out of the way. That was verse 15. In a similar way, these are the ones on whom seed was sown on the rocky places, who, when they hear the word, immediately receive it with joy. What are their intentions? And they have no firm root in themselves, but only temporary. And when affliction or persecution arises because of the word, immediately they fall away. verses 16 and 17. Verses 18 and 19. And others are the ones on whom seed was sown among the thorns. These are the ones who have heard the word, but the worries of the world and the deceitfulness of riches and the desire for other things enter in and choke the word, and it becomes unfruitful. What were their intentions? What were their intentions in becoming a Christian? How far did their intentions take them? And then verse 20. And these are the ones on whom seed was sown on the good soil, and they hear the word and accept it and bear fruit, 30, 60, and 100-fold. What were their intentions when they became a Christian? I'm going to leave that slide up there as I make the rest of my comments in this morning's lesson, because this is the kind of person that will live their intentions no matter what. The intention to be a faithful, loyal, devoted servant of God. I would say concerning the rich fool of Luke 12 that he had great intentions of material wealth and comfort, and apparently little or no intentions concerning spiritual things. Unfortunately, some preach that physical health and worldly wealth is proof that the person is living a God-blessed life. We call it the health and welfare gospel. He did certainly have his intentions, but not toward God. When it comes to those of Luke chapter 14, when Jesus is talking about counting the price, they wanted the benefits of salvation, but were looking for it at a 50% off rack. I bought some clothing not long ago. I found a 60% off rack. That's where I bought some clothing. And what Jesus about in looking at paying the price is people who want a discounted Christianity. They don't want to pay the other 60%, which might cost them a relationship with parents, might cost them a relationship with children, might cost them a relationship with their job, and might even cost them a relationship with their own selfishness. And Jesus puts it as plain as it can be put. You cannot be my disciple, now I'm going to use my terminology, on discount Christianity. Period. He said it, I repeated it. But I will admit that people who became Christians looking for a 50% discount Christianity probably didn't go into it that way. But once the issue came up, are you going to put me or your child first? Are you going to put me or your husband first? Are you going to put me or your mother and daddy first? Are you going to put me or yourself first? They probably didn't even think about the time would come when such a challenge would be made and they would have to make the decision, because their intentions only went so far. I don't know about you, but when I go to a clothing store, I look first at the discount racks. I don't know about you. Someone would say I'm cheap. I like to say I'm frugal. And I'm careful with my money. That sounds better than cheap. But folks, there is no cheap Christianity. Amen. There is no economical Christianity. There is no frugal Christianity. But there are people who do enter Christianity with intentions to go so far, but no further. That would be like Jesus saying, well, I tell you what, I've already emptied myself, I've already come to earth, but I'm not about to go through the suffering and death on the cross. I've gone as far as I'm going to go. Father, I'm coming back to heaven. And he leaves. No suffering, no cross, no death, no burial, no resurrection, no salvation. Jesus came to fulfill all that was written about him in the Psalms and the prophets and the law. Now the parable of the sower, Mark 4 verses 14 through 20, actually talks about some of these same kind of intentions. The first one had no intention to let God or his will interfere in any way in their life. I don't want any part of it. You've heard the expression, water off a duck's back? That's what it was to them. They didn't want any part of it. Now the second group received the message with joy, great joy. And they had every intention of living a joyful, carefree life as a Christian. But when trouble and persecution came because of their Christianity, probably one of the first things they did was to hide the fact that they were a member of the Lord's church. I've told you all before about a couple that I set up a study with. They'd been married for some time, and she was a member of the church, and he didn't even know it. She hid it well. She hid it well. In fact, I remember the street and the house almost where we had that study because I was shocked. A member of the Lord's church married somebody and they don't even know it. These people are looking for a happy, carefree, non-sacrificial salvation. They put Christian living on one side and persecution on the other of the scale of life, and living Christianity lost. Their intentions were to enjoy their Christianity, not to suffer for their Christianity. The third group may have had full intentions for living the Christian life, but this intention was not strong enough to keep their priorities straight. Good intentions likely replaced good actions until they were satisfied with an outward shell of Christ-likeness. In other words, I have been an active Christian. I have been involved. I have been regular. You can count on me for whatever needs to be done that I can do. But now all I have is the intention of doing that again someday. But right now, I've got one kid playing football, I've got another kid playing baseball, and I've got another kid taking piano lessons, and my wife is in the PTA, and I'm a member of the Lions Club, and I just don't have time. What do you mean you don't have time? What do you mean you don't have time? I tell you what, preacher, when my kids are grown and we don't have any more ball games to go to, and we don't have any other activities with our kids, and when my wife finally gives up being president of the PTA and I give up being president of the Lions Club, we'll be back in church. Not only will we be back in church, but I will be as active as anybody there. And I have intentions to do that one day. Do you hear the fact that these people didn't die as far as the church was concerned? They just became unfruitful. They were a fig tree with no figs. They were a wheat plant with no wheat. They were a tomato plant with no tomatoes. They were a stalk of corn with no corn. They were a Christian without any fruit. They may have had all the world of the intentions to be what they once were, because they once were fruitful, because it said they became unfruitful. Why? Because of the worries and the cares of the world. Not necessarily things that are sinful within themselves, but things that don't take people to heaven. And then this last category. The fourth group had the best of intentions. They considered the price of suffering and of putting first things first worth it all. I like what Paul said in Romans 8, verse 18. I consider that the sufferings of this present time. What sufferings, Paul? What did you go through? Well, I've been beaten with rods. I've been whipped with cat o' nine tails. I've been hunted by my own countrymen. I've been let down by members of the church. I've been shipwrecked. I've gone without adequate clothing. I've gone without food. But I'll tell you what, Bill. I consider that the suffering of this present time, these sufferings are not worthy to be compared with the glory that is to be revealed to us. How can you say that, Paul? How can you say that? There is only one cause worthy of our greatest intentions, and that is to one day hear, "Well done, good and faithful servant." Matthew 25:23 puts it this way. His master said to him, "Well done, good and faithful slave. Do you know a lot of people don't like that word slave in the Bible? They prefer the word servant because slave is too degrading. I'm not willing to be too degraded for Jesus. I'll be his servant, but not his slave. That's just too degrading, too humiliating, too humbling for my intentions. And that's the way some people are. I'm willing to be a volunteer, but not a servant. I'm willing to be a servant, but not a slave. And Paul says, Paul, a slave of Jesus Christ. You were faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Enter into the joy of your master. Living our intentions, because we probably will. We probably will. If our intentions are guided toward the world, then the first man describes us, the rich fool. If our intentions are to find a discount Christianity, we will find it and practice it. And if this church doesn't preach discount Christianity where you don't have to suffer and you're kind of guaranteed great health and wealth and well-being, you can go find that. You can go find it preached, and you don't have to drive very far to find it. But if you want a church that tries to be what Jesus wants to be, and that's what you want to be, and that's your deep down to the bottom of the sole of your feet. And I use that word soul, S-O-U-L. Then you're ready to be his slave and look forward to the glory to come.